Hello, and welcome to the MovieLabs 2030 Vision series, featuring fireside chats with the leading media and entertainment voices from across our industry. My name is Richard Berger, and I'm the CEO of MovieLabs and your host. Today, I'm talking with Chris Blandy, who is responsible for strategy and business development for media and entertainment at AWS. Chris, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
I'd love to get a little bit more about your background. How did you sort of get from the beginning to where you are today at AWS?
Well, let me start back in 2000 when I came out to LA for a job. And that's how I kind of broke into the media business. The internet was really taking off at the time. And a lot of the media companies were starting to try to figure out what their strategy was and starting to deploy websites and, digital media applications, if you will. And so I got a job working at Fox Sports, helping them with their digital strategy and presence, and really focused on video and broadband applications. And so I worked at Fox for a total of 19 years, from that day until the day that Disney acquired Fox, in a variety of different roles. And so in 2013, I took on a broader role, leading engineering across studio production, post-production, graphics, broadcast playout and origination, distribution to all of our affiliates, as well as the digital platform engineering work I'd already been doing.
So how do you think that background's helped you in your current role?
Well, I started to investigate using cloud in that new role right away. I had already started experimenting using AWS for hosting our digital efforts. And then we launched a lot of our TV everywhere applications when the iPad came out, and that whole revolution. And so we started building new things in the cloud. And so I brought into that traditional broadcast engineering department a lot of expertise around software engineering, how to use cloud, but it was still very early days. So around 2015, we started some projects to transform those traditional workflows and start to migrate some of those things into cloud. So I was fortunate enough to be part of a team that won a Tech Emmy for a lot of our work.
Wow.
In
Congrats.
Mastering the whole art of media supply chain in the public cloud, along with some of our current partners like SDVI and Evertz. So really early days in terms of working in that broadcast and sort of cable technical operations world and migrating those workflows into the cloud. And so I built up a lot of experience both as a customer and as a practitioner of implementing media technology in a media company. And in the fall of 2019, I saw the release of the 2030 vision, and I immediately downloaded the PDF and started reading it, and it was like this aha moment. I was like, okay, I'm not the only one doing this. I'm not the only one who believes in this strategy. So it was validation of a lot of the efforts that we'd been pursuing. And it was great to see that some of the key principles that I had put into our technology strategy were reflected in the 10 principles that you guys outlined.
Yeah, that's great. And so now how does that influence your role today?
Well, being a former customer and also having experience in the operations side of the business, I understand the complexities of these projects. I understand how challenging it is to not just change the technology, but also manage the change in terms of the operation and the business and things like that. So being able to relate to customers is probably my biggest strength, because I've been there. I walked a mile in their shoes. So I'm able to quickly earn trust with them and begin to have a dialogue with them about things that they do day to day. And I'm not coming at it from a technology vendor perspective. I'm coming at it from a business innovation perspective. How can we do things in a new and different way now that all this technology sort of has evolved?
We've been seeing a lot of alignment around the 2030 vision with the companies we're talking to. What does that alignment mean to you guys now when you see the industry coming together around this vision?
Well, I think it really helps to sort of plant a flag out there on the hill and say, hey, we should all go in that direction. It creates a common language for us to talk to customers and partners about in terms of that broader vision. I think it's universal in application, even beyond theatrical film and episodic television production. I see these principles showing up in other aspects of the media business with customers. So I think it's really helped in terms of alignment for the whole industry to be thinking about what is possible and where should we be heading.
We do this project on an ongoing basis, what we call cloud readiness. We sort of look at the 2030 vision, where we want to go and where we are today. And where there might be some gaps, what progress are we making? Are we closing any of those gaps? Where do you think we are on that journey? How ready are we, or what kind of progress are we making?
I see tremendous progress in the last few years. I think when you guys published the document, it was still early days, but we saw tremendous pressure coming on the industry with COVID, for example. And I was there when that happened. We had to send people home and figure out ways for them to work. Because we had built out that whole media supply chain platform in AWS, we didn't miss a beat. We were still able to ingest content. We were able to make air, no problem. So there was that pressure, along with the increased demand in content production volume with all the launches of the new OTT services, which again, launched on cloud for the most part and couldn't scale to the volume they had without cloud.
Right.
So a lot of business forces really drove much more rapid acceleration innovation, especially around direct-to-consumer distribution, remote collaboration, post-production, editing, and all those workflows to enable that remote workforce.
We're seeing some progress. Some parts of the workflow are moving into the cloud. In fact, it's pretty foundational to the vision, and I think the first 5 principles are about the cloud in some way. The first 2 in particular, all assets go straight to the cloud. They do not need to move. That's really key. And then the applications come to the media. The idea is we don't want to be shipping media files all over the place like we had been before. How important do you think it is to implement those principles in particular?
Well, for us, I think it's table stakes. We would love to get to a place where you can ingest once and then manage all your workflows, not just in post-production and mastering, but distribution through direct-to-consumer and integration with broadcast partners and so forth. I think we're on the verge of seeing that true end-to-end ecosystem truly realized. And one of my jobs is to identify where are those gaps in that workflow that we need to help close, either through our own innovation in terms of our services or in terms of the partners that we've embraced and we're working with to help close technology gaps.
Can you speak specifically about maybe some of the gaps that you focused on and have been closing and some of the projects where you are making progress with these principles in particular?
Sure. So one big one, which nobody thought we could do in the near term, was high-end color.
Yeah, we actually posted about that in our gap list in a blog maybe about a year or so ago.
Yeah, and I think we saw that. And we said, you know what?
That's the idea.
We could probably close that gap.
Yeah.
So let's put some investment in terms of people, time, and working with partners and work to close that gap. And we've recently won an HPA award for our efforts there. So that's a big one where there's a fundamental challenge in terms of latency and fidelity. That high-end colorist, that artist, is not looking for a middle-of-the-road solution. They want that precision. They want that immediate response when they make a change. And so we had to close a few technology gaps in terms of our core service offering. For example, we implemented a new capability called CDI, or Cloud Digital Interface, which allows 2 instances running in the cloud to send uncompressed video streams between those 2 instances. So that enabled us to have a color finishing application running on one and then send the output to another, which would then encode to JPEG XS and then send down to the ground. And now you can have a remote artist working with a high-end reference monitor and have the touch and the feel of them being in the edit bay, but they can work from home as long as they have the right terminal equipment.
Yeah, I've seen that demo. It's pretty cool. What do you think the role of partners are that you're working with to really make this happen?
Well, I believe partners should be really core to our strategy as we engage in this industry. As you know, the partner ecosystem is rich. There's multiple technology vendors in the space that provide extremely valuable application-level workflow tools. And so we see that, and we understand that we need to embrace that ecosystem. Content production partners and the applications they provide are really, the creative tools that the artist uses to make the content, right? So we've been working very diligently to embrace those partners, to help them with their own cloud journey in terms of providing technical support. And we have a rich partner program that enables them to sort of move through the process and help migrate their systems. And then, help them work with customers to deploy into the cloud.
There's multiple aspects of interoperability. How do you guys think about interoperability, and what role do you think AWS needs to play to improve it?
First and foremost, in any of these workflows, there's usually multiple tools and vendors in the mix. So it's not just a one-stop shop. So we realize we need to create an environment where all these tools and vendor systems can interoperate on somewhat of a level playing field. So we've actually hosted a couple of interops on that CDI platform, for example, working with our partners to test their systems in the cloud, talking to each other using that interface. So we believe in it very strongly. We understand that our customers think in terms of end-to-end workflow, and there are many tools in the chain, and we need to make sure that those tools run on AWS natively and also interoperate. We also know that customers are still in an environment where they've got a hybrid platform. They've got significant investment in on-premises equipment and tools, but they want to take advantage of cloud. So we have systems and capabilities to enable them to, for example, sync their data from their on-prem systems into AWS very quickly, or to use a standard file system that they're comfortable using and extend that into the cloud. Or tie their local network into our network so they can directly connect into our services.
I think part of interoperability, we look at, as you said, there's across infrastructure, there's data exchange. And really, we think about interoperability as a key ingredient for software-defined workflows and connecting all the different pieces and automating them. What other things have you guys been doing to really help focus on enabling software-defined workflows?
Well, we've started to build up capabilities and systems and services that enable our customers to do just that. So, for example, we've got a service that we launched, which is called Lambda, which allows you to run serverless logical workflows based on some state change that occurs either in your S3 bucket or wherever. So if you load a new piece of content into your content lake, you can monitor that, identify a change occurred, then kick off a process. So using software to define a workflow as opposed to having to write code for each step and then have operators move things along.
And that's really part of the key of trying to automate these mundane tasks out of the workflow to give more time back to the creatives so they can actually focus on creating, not either waiting for some media to ship or looking for all the things they need to do to gather to get started on a task, things like that.
Yeah, exactly. So one of our principles is that we can handle the undifferentiated heavy lifting. So let's take that on in terms of the scale and the capabilities we have. You focus on the value add that you bring to the table. And also, let's help you automate things so you can manage by exception. So if it's business as usual workflow and things are working, you can kind of let that run. But if it hits a snag, if there's a QC error, it'll flag it for a human, and then they can then engage and do their job.
Let's shift gears a little bit. I want to talk about security. When you're talking to customers, you're out in front there, and I guess give me a sense of what's the perception of cloud security. Our customers think it's secure? Are they still not sure? Is there more education needed? What are you finding?
I think in the early days there was some question marks about how secure can the cloud be. We have physical control of our assets. We're shipping it off to somewhere.
Yeah.
Where is it stored? Things like that. But I think we've done a lot to earn trust with customers in terms of transparency. We've also got over 98 different security certifications. And we have a shared responsibility model when it comes to security. So we focus on securing the cloud itself and our data centers. And then we work with customers to help secure their environments.
That's really important. And that's really what we've focused on as we looked at the 2030 vision. We really came to the realization that we needed a new approach to security. We couldn't just rely on perimeter security anymore. And we needed to move to more of a zero trust approach. Can you talk a little bit about how you've been moving towards that? And then in particular with our architecture that we published, the Common Security Architecture for Production, how you're looking at trying to help people implement that?
Sure. So yeah, we agree that it's not just about perimeter security anymore. You have to move towards a zero trust model. And we're giving customers tools to enable that. Separating, identity and role and permission and all those things. We're leaning in on the TPN, and we've also got people working closely on CSAP. So we're committed not just to security in general, but also some of the industry-specific security initiatives that are out there.
Recently, you guys just launched a new blog series, in particular focused on CSAP implementation. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. We've got a number of solution architects and service team members who are invested in helping make CSAP a reality on AWS. So we have a dedicated team that's really focused on working on that right now, and they will continue to publish their materials. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, definitely look forward to that. Let's talk a little bit about the content lifecycle. So I think in a conversation you and I had some time ago, we were looking at the cloud, the role of the cloud from the beginning, where camera to cloud, all the way through to archive and distribution. What do you think that role is for the cloud as it progresses through? And then especially when we get to archive, maybe you could talk a little bit about how you see the cloud, benefiting archive.
Sure. So one of the first things I did as a customer was move our LTO archive out of the basement and into AWS. There's a clear value proposition to do that in terms of the cost of maintaining systems on premises and the engineering support and all that. But there's also additional benefits that you can achieve by having your content stored in the cloud, because then once it's there, you can run any number of other processes on that content versus having it sort of stranded in some tape library or LTO system or some vault somewhere that a third party is managing for you. So I think we're finding a number of situations where customers are able to unlock new value by migrating their archives in and then running processes on it like metadata extraction and object recognition, and really building up and enriching their metadata about their content and then finding new ways to exploit it. So archive is definitely part of the strategy, and we've got a tremendous platform in terms of both our S3 storage platform and Glacier and all the tiers that you can take advantage of within that. Further upstream, though, we are looking at that end-to-end workflow, and how do we get ingest once, OCF, DIT out into the cloud, and then run all of your posts and all your mastering, and then further downstream distribution to broadcast partners or out to theaters or to SVOD, TVOD, AVOD platforms, you name it. So a lot of that stuff is already running in AWS. So now it's just about kind of connecting the dots and building those bridges. And as we go through that, we're identifying the tech gaps and the vendor pieces that we need to kind of partner on and continue to fill out that story.
Where do you think we'll start to see real efficiencies when we start connecting all those different pieces? Once everything's in the cloud, where do you think we'll see the most value?
Well, certainly in terms of the distribution models, we're seeing tremendous compression in terms of windowing, day-and-date releases, distribution of multi-platform globally, and an increase in the volume and appetite for content. So in terms of both volume and time to market, we're seeing efficiency gains by using cloud technology with our customers.
I think also when we think about the distribution and propagation of assets from one stage of the workflow to another is a publish function. And again, it's not shipping media files all around, it's provisioning access to, so the media stays in place, and that can create a lot of efficiency as well.
Absolutely. And I think that works upstream too. So one of the ideas that we're starting to formulate is the concept of a content lake, like a data lake, but it's content focused and it has unique characteristics because it's all about managing content and giving content owners sovereignty over their content and not handing it out to their vendor partners, but provisioning access, granting access based on role, based on whatever security rules they want to put in place, and enabling that third party to access only what they need to do that job.
So it's more secure, there's more visibility, more control, more efficient.
And it aligns with several of your principles, like bringing the work and application to the content as opposed to moving the media all around. Now, in our model, we have account structures. So as a content owner, I can store my content in one place and provision access to people I want to have access. And then I can also copy that content to third parties if I need to distribute it. So we can enable both types of workflows.
Do you see there might be some lessons learned from other industries that could be applied to media and entertainment, and also vice versa?
Yeah, I think we're starting to see some alignment and collaboration with our other industry verticals. For example, a lot of our pay TV operator customers are in our telecommunications vertical, but there's a natural fit between our programmers and the distributors. So we can learn from how they're transforming their physical plant into more of a virtual IP-based plant, and then how can we leverage cloud to distribute between those programmers and the distributors. We're also learning lessons from other industries like fintech, for example. We announced recently that NASDAQ is moving the entire exchange onto AWS over several years. So learning about availability and uptime and reliability and security. from that experience, and then applying it to the media and entertainment industry.
Yeah, that should give some confidence to maybe some people aren't so sure about cloud security when all the financial systems are moving over there, and government and things like that. I think we've covered a lot of ground in a pretty short amount of time. Is there, if you were to boil the 2030 vision down into sort of a key takeaway for our viewers, what would you say that is?
I'd say the most important thing is that it set the stage for discussion with the technology vendors, with the customers, and with the partners, and created alignment in terms of where should we go? What are the key principles? What are the tenets of the future sort of cloud-based content production and distribution workflows? And what's the common language that we should use to discuss these things? So it's made it tremendously easier to have conversation with customers and partners, because we can point back to the principles and say, we have alignment here, we believe in this, I think you do too. Like I said, I just had lunch with a studio CTO, and we're talking the same language. I come from the media business, but now I'm on the technology vendor side. So we have that common language already, but when I start talking about the MovieLabs 2030 vision and those principles, it just rings true in terms of hitting the mark in terms of how we think about the future.
Is there something that you would maybe suggest to help people out there prepare for this future that we're really striving for? What would you suggest?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest lessons learned that I can share is that it's not just a technology project, right? It's not about just taking what you're doing today and re-engineering it in the cloud. It's also a business transformation and operational change project. You really need to think about innovative ways to work and new ways of doing things, because you're unlocking so much potential in terms of how to do work. You can rethink your whole workflow. So when you're thinking about that migration, don't just think lift and shift, but think about replatforming and driving operational change, driving change in terms of business leaders and how they think about what's possible, and driving change with the CFO and how they think about the finances behind it. We can do so much more than we're doing today because of the potential that cloud technology provides.
Good advice. Thank you so much for spending time with me today, and really appreciate you supporting the 2030 vision, and I look forward to a lot more work together.
Thank you for having me, and I do too. I appreciate it.
Thanks for watching the MovieLabs 2030 Vision series. For more information about the MovieLabs 2030 Vision, including additional white papers, videos, blogs, architectures, and specifications, please check out our website at movielabs.com, and be sure to subscribe and follow us on LinkedIn and YouTube. Thanks.